Hello, today we are talking about lean consulting, how it led to some serious cost savings, and specifically, we're looking at a company that manufactures lifting equipment. We'll dive into some of the processes that go into creating the lift systems, the types that you see out on construction sites, and really anytime somebody needs to work at height. So to do that, I am joined by Matt Kreiner, a pro in the area of lean manufacturing. Matt, how you doing today?
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm doing well, thanks.
Okay, so let's talk about making improvements to a workflow. So let's start out basically digging into where this particular company was in the spring of 2019. What were they seeing that made them realize that something had to change?
Yeah, so the customer, their incumbent supplier was struggling to maintain acceptable service levels, and it was primarily caused by issues with their supply chain. So, and that it makes it difficult because this customer utilizes specially coded hardware that's a challenge to source and procure quickly if there are supply chain disruptions or stockouts.
They are creating a lot of things. They're not creating just one product. What are the different variations that they are creating?
Yep. So they have telescoping boom lifts, scissor lifts. They have institutional lifts for something you would see more at hospitals, churches, things like that. Part of this program also involves heavy tow trucks and rollbacks. So it's a very diverse product offering.
Interesting. Okay. So did they know that they wanted to get lean, or was lean manufacturing not even on their radar yet? Or maybe it's better for me to ask, how did you and the Fastenal lean team get called in to help?
Yeah, so along with needing their supplier, having a supplier they can rely on to meet their service expectations, they were looking to improve their line side stocking locations with an improved system that was intuitive, it was able to be replicated and dynamic to ensure they had the proper quantities of all parts where they needed them and when they needed them with still having visibility to them across the entire platform.
Okay, so I feel like that helps us understand what they were seeing at that exact time. Now, this is a big company. They have a lot of different facilities in a lot of different cities. They basically have a spider web of interconnected teams. So, on the Fastenal side, how did we work with that? What happened next?
Yeah, so we had an existing relationship with this customer with some other commodities, so it was natural for them to reach out to Fastenal for assistance. So we were initially asked to supply a small set of SKUs in attempt to relieve the incumbent of some of their workload and also assist the customer in filling their supply chain. So the initial offerings were standard stock items for Fastenal, so we were able to react rather quickly in filling the supply chain. The lean team was really initially brought in to assist with the appropriate storage solutions out on the customer floor, labels, and then establishing a baseline system ensure a smooth transition on that small set of parts.
So, I think I'm still a little bit unclear. Is that when you were called in? Is that the start of the lean magic?
Yeah, so the Metro Atlantic Lean team was brought in initially to assist with that, with setting up the branch and the customer facing solutions as the initial for the initial part offerings. This involved layout and fixture requirements for our building, as well as the bin requirements, labels, and the technology needed to service the customer. Another challenge with this customer is they have 10 or 12 facilities, 5 towns, in roughly a 60-mile radius. So that all required service in that local market. So it was imperative to build a solid foundation with the customer and internally, really, to ensure a smooth transition and a successful launch to the program.
A dozen facilities in 5 towns. I didn't even know that's that spider web. Okay, let's dive deeper now. Let's talk about the actual physical transition of what was going on. I'm guessing this wasn't a take your time kind of a thing, but just how tight was the timeline?
Yeah, so it's really a myriad of potential solutions, but the transition really started as a phased approach. So phase one, as I previously mentioned, was that small set of SKUs, roughly 50 parts, that rolled into phase two based on the same challenges. So the incumbent was still struggling with supplying those SKUs, and it was a set of SKUs that we had the ability to secure or procure and fill the supply chain. So based off those two phases, Fastenal was awarded the complete hardware package after that successful launch of the two prior phases. So this commenced in early 2020, and unfortunately, it coincided with the global pandemic. So it was certainly a challenge. We ended up operating the incumbent's warehouse, finding and outfitting a 50,000 square foot facility for our own long term home while sourcing, ordering, and developing a quality program for long term supply chain, as well as developing the planograms and labels for each of the buildings and supplying the customer daily. Roughly 1,100 sublocations and about 45,000 bins. So this was all working, you know, all simultaneously. The customer never shut down. We never were able to shut down. So it was really a the success of it really came from a lot of hard work and a lot of long days with a limited amount of people due to the pandemic restrictions at the time. So the Metro Atlantic Lean team, along with members from some of the other, I'll say, semi-local teams, primarily in the Northeast and just a touch south of us, successfully executed these plans with little to no manufacturing impacts to the customer.
I am just stuck on the scale of this project. Uh, Before we hit record, you said something that stands out to me. Fastenal moved 700,000 pounds of product in 8 days. What was going on there? How is that even possible?
So part of this project required Fastenal Company to handle the disposition of a significant amount of inventory from the incumbent on the customer's behalf, basically a stock lift. So there was at the 12-month point of the relationship, we had developed and executed a disposition plan for the remaining inventory from that stock lift. So we essentially developed the list, pulled, packed, and delivered roughly 750,000 pounds of inventory in 8 days. It was done exclusively on the customer's behalf and without their involvement, saving them hundreds of man hours and roughly 15,000 square feet of warehouse that they did not have had they needed to store that product.
So I think this is maybe oversimplifying it, but how did getting leaner help this particular company?
So it's certainly still a work in progress, but we've started an intuitive stocking program for the first time that allows this customer to have complete visibility to their entire line side hardware offering and a baseline quantity per bin that allows the customer peace of mind and that they have the required amount of inventory to match their tack rate and build schedules for each of their lines. Prior to Fastenal being the supplier of record, the incumbent would give them an updated location list annually. They now have access to view their line side stocking levels and locations via Fast 360 real time.
What comes next for this customer? Is there something that Fastenal is looking at doing for them that is pretty typical for what you see in the industry, or is this going to be totally unique?
So the solutions that we've come up with are typical throughout customers like this across multiple platforms, which make what makes this a little bit unique is the sheer size and scale of it. Again, there's roughly 1,100 sublocations with roughly 45,000 individual bins. So having the customer be able to review their bills of material and their new up-to-date build schedules or tack rates and then explode that out into line side order of operations and how that translates to bin size and the scale of the solution to hold those bins. It's a monumental task. So we're starting small with one line and hopefully building the foundation to roll it out to all of their lines across the entire platform.